Is the food pyramid a conspiracy? I'm going to address that in this video. I'm going to say yes. And the reason that I say that is you really have to go back to what happened in agriculture after the Great Depression. So we had an agricultural secretary named Earl Butz. And part of what he did was to encourage farmers to plant more crops, and to incentivize them, he created subsidies. So the big three, corn, wheat, and soy, were all subsidized by Earl Butz. So farmers, you know, kind of like we have today, drill baby drill, was plant baby plant. So plant as much as farmers could plant, because they were guaranteed money. They weren't going to go broke because the government was going to give them the subsidies to grow these. So it was cheap for them to grow. And when we entered the whole health crisis that transpired in the 50s and has worked its way up ever since, we came to the point of the government saying, hey, we need nutritional guidelines for the American people. What do we do? So they set up a panel to discuss what the dietary recommendations should be so that we could have a healthy population that wasn't obese and have heart disease and all of the things that were beginning to grow at that point in time. And this was in the early to mid 70s. Now, the thing you have to understand is this panel was comprised of a majority of people who were vegetarians. Plus, you had people on there who were advocates of Earl Butz's program of subsidizing farmers. And their argument was that, you know, if you don't recommend eating these grains, then the farmers are going to suffer. And we're going to be right back to where we were. So it was really a perfect storm. And when they came to the final recommendations, all of the scientists that were on this panel said, hey, we haven't had enough time to study what the effects of all this is going to be. You can't make this a recommendation yet. And the government said, tough, this is what we're going with. And that began the downhill slide of the health of the population. And that food pyramid and those dietary recommendations has filtered throughout the entire world. And as more and more countries have adopted these nutritional guidelines, their health has suffered as well. And the only people now left who don't suffer these diseases are the populations that still eat whatever their natural diet was. They didn't adopt the standard Western diet. But then, as we began to see that this wasn't working and you know, the nutritional guidelines weren't helping people, things were just getting worse, you would think the government would go back, revisit this, and go, oh, we got it wrong. Let's fix this, and this is what it should be now. They didn't do that. And I think part of the reason that they didn't do that is because now you've got big pharma in the picture. Prior to this, you know, they made some vaccines and some medications, some specialized treatments, but most of it was pain relievers and things like that. But now all of a sudden, you had all these new diseases that they could develop medications for to treat the symptoms. They don't cure anything. They treat it. So now you have the backside of that, which is big pharma going, hey, if you change this, we're going to lose money. So we need to find a balance here. And that narrative has been driven through American society since probably the mid to late 80s. And you add into that, compounding the problem with pesticides. It started with DDT, which they claim was safe, and they would show videos of them spraying kids with it. Well, next thing you know, we got birth defects, and that's what started the March of Dimes. So they said, well, DDT is not healthy, we got to get rid of that. And then they came out with glyphosate. And now we're learning that glyphosate is just as bad, if not worse. So, you know, industry drives government policy. And when you try to change that, the first thing they do is put out disinformation to discredit anybody who tries to tear down that narrative and fix it. And that's why carnivore has gotten such a bad rap, is because if they were to turn around right now, let's say tomorrow, they come out and they say, you know, we got the food pyramid wrong. This is the way it should be. Turn it upside down. That's the way you should be eating. How bad would that affect the economy? I mean, you think about it, farmers all of a sudden are going to have a surplus of grains and soy and no place to sell it because people aren't eating it. The pharmaceutical company, people are getting healthy. They don't need all these medications anymore. They're going to suffer. The only people that are going to benefit is going to be the meat producers. And that's the way it should be. We should have never subsidized these grains. It's just not healthy. And if you haven't looked around and seen the population lately, then you're in a closet, because all you have to do is look and you can see the difference. When I was growing up and going to school, we had maybe 1 or 2 kids that were overweight. That was it. Everybody else was pretty much thin. Yeah, you had a few that had a few extra pounds, but they weren't morbidly obese. Nowadays, you're hard-pressed to find a handful of kids in a classroom that aren't morbidly obese. And it's a shame, because we've allowed these policies to dictate the health of our children. And for the first time in human history, our children aren't going to live as long as we are. And that's a shame. And the scientific and pharmaceutical industry, all they want to do is look for the next drug that they can prescribe to mask this or that and extend life. But the only reason they want to extend it is because you'll buy medications for the rest of your life. Who wants to be 150 years old and be taking 20 pills a day? I don't. I don't know about you, but that just doesn't sound appealing to me, not to mention the cost of doing that. My wife's grandmother, when she died, was on 26 medications. 26. And this was before I knew anything about carnivore or diet and nutrition. You know, I was young. But even then I knew that was wrong, you know, because you take this medication to deal with this problem. Oh, but that causes this side effect. So now we got to take this medication to counteract that side effect. But that has a side effect, which now you got to take another medication to counteract that side effect. And it just snowballs. And I don't understand how anybody in their right mind could want to live a life where you have to take these medications and spend all this money on those medications just to function. It's baffling, but our government is complicit in this, because they refuse to come out and do what should have been done 40 years ago and flip the food pyramid and said, no, we got it wrong. This isn't correct. You need to eat whole foods. You need to eat a primarily meat-based diet with plenty of saturated fats if you want to be healthy and be a healthy weight. I just don't see that changing, and that's why these movements like the carnivore movement has been gaining power and becoming more and more popular, because people are discovering that these ailments that they've had for decades go away when they switch to carnivore. And it's not a one-off. It's everybody that does this. So you've got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands worldwide, going on carnivore, healing themselves, coming off medications, and yet the governments of the world still refuse to do the research and look at this data and change the nutritional guidelines that are killing us. Is it population control? It's possible. I know if you do the research, Henry Kissinger was a big proponent of population control, and there's a number of other ones. Bill Gates is one. Rockefeller was one. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that that's driving this. And maybe it's the perfect storm of subsidizing farmers and keeping the pharmaceutical companies happy and in business, and at the same time reducing population. I mean, you look at even the COVID outbreak, who died from that? The elderly, the sick. Yeah, makes sense. I don't know if I'm right or not, but I know the facts support this. Maybe it's just the money from big industry that drives it all, and there's not really a conspiracy behind it, but more of a financial conspiracy, that if you want to continue to be in office and get the perks, then you better stand behind all this. I don't know. Hope you enjoyed this little talk. Maybe gave you some food for thought, and you'll do your own research and see what you come up with. Give me a like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this. And do you think this is a conspiracy? And if so, why? And how do you see this ending? Love to hear it. And I will reply to your comments. I don't just ignore people that comment. I'll reply to your comments. Stay strong, stay sharp. Carnivore for life.